while we're talking, I'd like to segue into your foundation and the Cold Case Initiative, and I'd like to talk about really that it's different. It's the same, but it's different. It's trying to solve cases, but trying to solve cases that should be solved over the hump of genealogy, and it's expensive. And this is what you do. And there's a great story about a famous case in Publicker Jane Doe that was actually before you, right, Chris and Dave? Was that before you guys came on the force about that time?
Yeah, no, she
Way
was
before.
found in January of 1988. So that was
Okay.
um, several years before Dave and I started there.
If you
But
guys can talk about that, and really the end is really what I want our viewers to hear, and that's the basis on what your cold case initiative fundraising and the nonprofit is trying to do. So you take it, guys, about that.
so that case, the Publicker case, she was known as Publicker Jane Doe, also Bucks County Jane Doe, and she was discovered in January of 1988. They found skeletal remains of her, and also she was actually pregnant. So within her remains, there were fetal bones as well, and she was found on the property of an abandoned distillery called the Publicker Distillery. So that's where Publicker Jane Doe comes from. And on that distillery had closed down years prior, and it was a big abandoned property, and it just became one of those places where nothing good happened there. Stolen cars were dumped there. It's my understanding kids would go back there and party and things like that. But there was this one day, there was this couple walking through there. I believe they were walking their dog. And at various spots on the property, there were these, I describe them as underground well or pump houses. It had, if there are photos available online, if you Google the case, it looked like a concrete bunker coming out of the ground, maybe a foot and a half. And there was an opening, a square opening, and there was a steel ladder that was bolted to the side of the wall where an employee would go up and down the ladder. And at the bottom, once you would get into the well, there was valves and levers and big pipes. It had something to do with the distillery process. I just, not knowing how that's done, I don't know exactly what it was called or what it was for. But anyway, these people, they looked down, and literally as they looked down, there was a human skeleton staring back up at them. She was laying on her back, and it was always my impression that she didn't fall down there because she didn't have any injuries that would be consistent. It would have been like a 10 or 12 foot fall. And the way she was, it looked like she was placed. Would you agree with that, Dave? That yeah. And she was dressed, although her blouse had really deteriorated greatly, but she was wearing jeans. And there were other articles of clothing that were scattered throughout the chamber with her that I almost got the impression that maybe she had a suitcase or a duffel bag and it was just picked up and dumped. And this thing was exposed to the elements because it was open. So, if it snowed, if it rained, it got in there. So, there was water at the bottom of it. There was trash there. There was tires down there. But she was estimated at being about 17 to 23 years old, Caucasian female. But there was no missing person reports that matched her description at the time in NCIC. And she wasn't identified. Years later, right around the time Dave and I got hired in 1992, Frank Bender, who was one of the founding members of the VDOC Society, he's very well known for his sculptures. Unfortunately, he's deceased now, but he actually said he could look at a human skull and he could tell you what that person looked like in life. And his work backs that up because he had solved a lot of cases. And
John List, right.
Yeah. He actually did a sculpture over Jane Doe's skull. And I remember seeing it one day in our police station because our director at the time, Frank Friel, knew him, and he had asked him to do that. So I remember seeing that sculpture when I was around 22 years old. So anyway, fast forward to around 2002 when I started opening up all the cold cases we had. I tried everything I could at the time. I mean, and one thing I did do that some people criticize me for, I don't really care, is, by then we had the internet. So I was putting the case on a lot of these websites that, for people, it was even before people like yourself with podcasters, but there was websites for like, web sleuths and things like that. And I would submit the case to it because I wanted to get it out there. Some people were like, well, you put that out there, I don't know who the hell this girl is. So what do I have to lose by putting it out there? I want to put it out there. What's the difference if I do that? Or, when we had the sculpture years back, we put it in the newspaper. So I put it out, and then I tried a lot. I tried phenotyping. I tried isotope analysis. I tried every, I got her DNA and I put her into the CODIS system, because I had gotten grant money for that. The big problem was, like the problem with all cold cases, Dave will tell you, anybody that if you want to take a cold case, the first thing you want to do is try and bring it up to modern day standards with what you can do with forensics now that you couldn't do back then. And that's great. And it's great, but it costs money. Yep. And I we had a very well-funded department, but I did a few things. Like on this particular case, that's her. And if you find the sculpture of Frank Bender that he did and put them together, you juxtapose them, I think he was on the money. But ultimately, I made a deal with a woman named Yolanda McClary, who was a genealogist, and she had done a television show called The Jane Doe Murders, where she was doing exactly what I needed done. And she said, look, I'll help you with this case. Just, if we ever want to do it as an episode, let me do it. And I asked the boss, and he said, yeah. So that's exactly how we did it. We were able to get Bodie Labs to do the lab work pro bono. And then Yolanda and her team were able to build the family tree once they got the DNA profile. And once they got it, I couldn't keep up with her. It was about 4 days calling me. I sent you this, I sent you that. And I remember it was a Friday in the winter, and it was cold, rainy Friday. And around 5 o'clock, she texted me and said, check your email. And I checked my email. I called her back. She had sent me a couple names. And she said, these two names, this man and this woman, they're sisters. Your Jane Doe is their older sister. And I was like, I was a little skeptical, to be honest with you. And